Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Indie Game Lab Studios. I'm Garth, your host, and today I'm joined by Elli, creator of Worldbreakers, Advent of the Advent of the Khanate.
You got
Sorry.
it.
Yes. All right. So thank you so much for joining us. Viewers will maybe recognize you. I guess sans jester cap this time. But yes, you've been on our show before. Last time you were on, it was pre-Kickstarter, and now you have now run a successful Kickstarter and are kind of in a different part of the process. So we wanted to have you back. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is
Great.
fun.
Yeah. We have fun here. Joe, are we actually streaming? Is everything good? All right.
He's gone.
That's good. It's better off that way. Okay, perfect. Yes, so thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching, everybody. So today, I thought we would do something a little different. I mean, maybe we'll play a game if we've got time, but mostly I just want to talk about your experience going through Kickstarter, the marketing angles, all of the kind of other things that go into making a successful game other than the game design bit.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. And I will briefly mention that I'm also going to give a talk in the end of this year in CraftCon.
Ooh, okay.
And CraftCon is part of. Oh man, I'm not ready. Let me figure out the details. I'll pull them up and then
Okay.
I'll repeat that message.
Nice. Okay, yeah, we can post some stuff in the chat for folks or in the description. Because
Yes.
there's a lot of things we can that people that want to get involved can do. Speaking of which, is it too late to get in on getting a copy of Worldbreakers, like now that the Kickstarter's over?
Yeah, so you can get the copy of the game by going to wallbreakers.bakerkit.com
Okay.
and clicking on the pre-order now button, or you can go to the Worldbreakers Kickstarter campaign itself, and you can get a copy there.
Okay, so I've got okay, here we go, backer kit. Okay, nice. Yeah, this project was successfully funded on Kickstarter. Raised on Kickstarter, $29,857.
Yeah, so close to 30K.
Oh, was there a did you have a stretch goal that didn't quite make it at 30K?
No, I
Okay.
just wanted to reach 30K
Oh,
because I thought it would be awesome. But
nice.
it's okay because as soon as the pre-order store came up, we've gone way past 30K.
Oh,
So
okay. Excellent.
yeah,
Yeah.
just from stuff that people ordered pretty much as soon as the campaign ended, we were at like 34.
Okay.
So I'm pretty happy with where we ended up.
Nice. So you've got to, and then if this is going to stay up for a while, right? You've got to get in an order to the printer that kind of calculates for that, right? You're going to actually order more copies of the game than have been purchased so far. Is that true, or?
Yeah, that's a big question I've been facing. How many extra copies to
Mm-hmm.
get? And I got many different suggestions on that. So factoring in all of the pledges, and I have 16 retailers on board as well. So factoring all of that in, it ends up being about 750 copies. And then on top of that, I did want to order a few copies for reviewers. So
Yeah.
that's another 50 or so. And on top of that, I rounded up the print run to 1,500. So
Okay.
I ordered an extra 700 copies, which I hope to sell through conventions and distributors.
Nice.
I have no idea if that is the
Yeah.
right number. You should ask me again
I know,
in.
right? Well, maybe we should ask you more about the stuff you've already actually been through. Then,
Yeah.
so how was running a Kickstarter? Was it stressful to actually running the Kickstarter?
Yes and no. I was expecting a tremendously stressful month, but the campaign was the entire month of March.
Yeah.
But in effect, the campaign actually was, let's say, the first 5 days and the last 3 days of the
Mm-hmm.
month. And one excellent resources for looking at these kinds of statistics is kicktrack.com with a Q at the end. So if you have any plans to run a Kickstarter campaign, or if you're interested in the world of Kickstarter, I suggest taking some of your favorite projects and running them through Kicktrack. They're going to give you statistics on how well the campaign did. And I don't know if you can pull up the Worldbreakers Kicktrack and show it on screen. But if you do, the initial graph is how did the campaign do day by day, and you'll notice that most of the days beyond the range I specified are pretty sparse. It looks like the campaign is pretty much ignored outside of that period. And if you do plan to run a Kickstarter campaign, I think that's something worth considering.
Hmm.
You probably want to plan your campaign for somewhere between 14 and 21 days.
Okay.
Just to, I mean, the rest is pretty much a waste of your time. You don't see much money,
Right.
so it's not worth stretching it that long because you can use that time for other stuff, especially when you factor in that it takes a while before you get the money once the campaign finishes. So if the campaign is 10 days shorter, you're going to get your money from Kickstarter 10 days earlier.
Right. Joe and I were just talking about that actually. Like, there's definitely a kind of well-known thing in the Kickstarter world, which is this kind of mid-campaign slump where everyone rushes to back your game that was like waiting eagerly on those first few days. The people that were a little unsure kind of wait until those last few days, and then they're like, yeah, okay, let's do it, and then they'll back on the last few days. But that middle section, like, what do you do? Do you just kind of ride it out? Maybe get a few people trickling in through ads that they happen to see, or is it better to just make it shorter? That's an interesting thing to think about.
Right. And we should probably elaborate on that when we go a bit deeper into Kickstarter marketing.
Hmm.
Kickstarter marketing is based on bursts, and getting these bursts in the middle of the campaign is nearly impossible. You pretty much want to plan as much as possible ahead of the campaign, and that's going to lead up to the big bursts you see at the beginning, at the end. These bursts are influenced by messaging that Kickstarter itself sends. And breaking out of Kickstarter messaging during the campaign is incredibly difficult unless you end up featured on a huge board gaming channel as a centerpiece, for example. That's unlikely to happen.
Right. Well, so I have a plan. So I don't want to talk about myself. I want to talk about your experience. But my plan for my Kickstarter coming soon, July 26th, is that I'm going to have a booth at Gen Con the week after it starts. So I don't know if that's so. Joe was just telling me that was kind of a bad idea. We're not sure, but like, so we're gonna like have that big campaign push at the beginning, right? And then like a week later, hopefully get an influx from Gen Con. I'm not sure if it's gonna work or not, but
I'm really curious to hear how it goes for you.
okay,
Um, I know that yeah, I don't know how it's going to go. I don't recall any campaigns who did it.
okay.
Do you know anyone who tried it?
Well, I don't know. I've been at some conventions where there are people that have active Kickstarters, like at the convention, and I've heard some people talk about that's one way to combat the mid campaign slump, but I'm not actually sure how it does. Like I don't know. There's this one about like a film noir game that was at PAX Unplugged that looked pretty interesting. I ended up backing them, um, and it was one of those things where like we already hit our goal, but back here you get this deluxe component, and there's still
Got it.
stretch goals to unlock basically. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I think that's a good segue to talking more directly about crowdfunding. Unless there's any more
oh no, yeah, yeah.
preliminary questions you want to touch on.
Take us away. Crowdfunding.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I finally found the details I wanted to share.
Okay.
I'm going to present in CrafterCon, and that's going to be in December 1st,
Okay.
2022. It's part of Protospiel,
Oh, nice.
which Protospiel is this 4-day convention for board game development. So if you care about board game development, if you're excited about developing yourself or playtesting, if you want to be at the forefront of the hobby, then Protospiel is a great place to go. And CraftRecon is the first day, and we're going to have a series of talks. Some of those I'm excited about. One is Dave Beck. He created Distilled, which is a really
Oh,
cool
yes.
game.
Yep.
Yeah, And Distilled's Kickstarter campaign was, I think it was a pretty phenomenal success.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard Dave talk in Board Game Design Lab.
Nice.
And I actually saw him demo Distilled in Midwinter Gaming Convention this
Okay.
past January. So one great talk in CrafterCon is Dave Beck's. And another one is Nicole Fend. She's going to talk about working with freelancers.
Oh, okay.
And if you plan to make any kind of board game which is above like pretty straightforward basic stuff, you're gonna need freelancers for design, graphics design, illustration.
Yeah.
If you want to go to Kickstarter, you're gonna need Kickstarter. You're gonna need freelancers for creating the video and so on. So I'm pretty excited about Nicole's talk as well. And finally, I'm gonna give a talk. Full disclosure: title of the talk is "Crowdfunding is bad for you: How to get your game published without it."
Yeah.
So
Okay.
hopefully,
Oh, okay.
uh,
That's
th-
interesting.
yes, that's gonna give some introduction to how I interpret my Kickstarter experience.
Wow. Okay. Well, maybe you can give us a preview here. Welcome to the chat, Arena of Ambition. Joe's got some questions I see there too, so we can get to those.
Right.
But do you have any previews? So crowdfunding is bad for you. So as opposed to crowdfunding, you're talking about basically self like funding the campaign yourself and then like selling the product afterwards and as opposed to what, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Right. So you want to make a game, and I think many people want to reach some sort of mainstream audience
Mm-hmm.
within like mainstream is the board game hobby, right? You don't expect to be on Times Square billboards, but you want to reach the board gaming hobby,
Right.
and there's essentially three parts to doing that. There is developing the game, and I think a lot of attention goes to that, like how to develop a game, how to play test it. Excellent. There's excellent guides out there. The second part is manufacturing and freighting the game. And I'm splitting these in two parts because manufacturing the game nowadays is surprisingly easy. There's a whole cottage industry of manufacturers and print on demand stores that can manufacture your game for you. And even first time indie games can have these complex plastic injection minis in them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So um, manufacturing your game nowadays is surprisingly easy. Freighting it is more difficult on account of COVID-19.
Right.
And starting March 2020, we saw a huge bump in freight costs. There's been a lot of conversation about that.
Yep.
These prices have gone down somewhat, but they haven't gone back to pre-COVID levels, and they're probably not going to. The latest estimates is that this is the new reality where freight is just about twice as expensive as it was in 2019. So that's the second part of your game, manufacture and freighting. The third part of the game is marketing and sales.
Mm-hmm.
And that is informing people that your game exists. And an important thing about marketing, there is no convincing in marketing. So it's not about convincing people that they
Right.
want your game. It's about finding them at that moment when they're most interested and most open to buying your game.
Yes.
And that's what marketing and sales is all about. What Kickstarter does, what crowdfunding does, as the name implies, it helps you get money, funding, for all of these different operations.
Mm-hmm.
I think many indie developers think of Kickstarter as we're gonna develop and design the game, and then we're gonna run a Kickstarter to sell the game, and then we're going to manufacture and freight it.
Right.
And in their mind, Kickstarter takes care of that step too. But the same way you wouldn't expect Kickstarter to design your game or to produce your game, you shouldn't expect Kickstarter to market your game because it doesn't. Kickstarter is not a marketing tool.
Mm-hmm.
Kickstarter and similar crowdfunding websites is a tool for funding. So once you have someone who wants to give you money, these platforms help you collect that money through a particular structure of a campaign.
Right.
But the mere fact that you're running a campaign doesn't help you with marketing. The marketing is still all you. Like 100% you need to do all of the marketing. And while Kickstarter is a bit of a leverage on top of that, it's very minor. So it's
Yeah,
not like,
I heard 10%. Yeah.
right, that's a good number. I would say it's between 5 and 10%.
Okay.
So it's not that you're going to bring 20% of the backers and Kickstarter is going to bring the remaining 80%. You need to effectively bring all of the backers yourself independently from the crowdfunding platform.
Mhm.
And I think it's really important that future Kickstarter campaigns know it as soon as possible, because
Yes.
this process of getting eyeballs to your campaign in today's board gaming and crowdfunding uh, ecosystem is incredibly expensive and
Oh
difficult.
yeah. Definitely. Yeah. So a lot of stuff to chew on there. Um,
Yeah.
expensive is one thing. So recently I was talking with someone who didn't use Kickstarter, basically designed and self-published a game, skipped Kickstarter entirely, just went straight to the printers. Like I think he went with Long Pack Games. He printed out 1,500 copies, and then he has a website that he sells it through, and he's going to conventions, basically selling copies of his game. And I feel like that's an interesting and bold move to do. I think it involves being kind of rich already. there's a there's
Yes.
there's sort of a saying I've heard uh, in the game design industry that if you want to make a small fortune being a game designer, you have to start with a large fortune. Um,
Yes. That's surprisingly accurate.
okay, great. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's true. I think there's for those folks watching that don't have a bit of capital to start with, there's things you can do. Um, I guess I don't really know what they are. I think I'm sort of in the boat of kind of throw money at marketing and just to get the word out there. Um, I think that's sort of what you did too. Speaking of expensive, you probably spent a good amount of money on marketing. Um, that was like a part of the budget, right? That you have to consider.
Right. And I think that's an important thing to discuss. And I mentioned that my I feel that a lot of the conversation about Kickstarter comes from campaigns who succeeded, like went totally viral and broke the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you hear many of these creators go to conventions and on podcasts and talk about their experiences. Then you have people who their campaign failed entirely.
Mm-hmm.
And to be candid, most of the times it's just bad preparation on their end. And we can talk about that. I don't think there's a lot of discourse from campaigns that just did what they wanted to do,
Yeah.
and maybe a bit more than that. So I'm incredibly grateful that Worldbreakers got to $30,000. I mean, my goal was 10K. I
Mm-hmm.
tripled that.
Yeah.
I'm blown away by it. So I'm really excited.
Right.
And I think many of the campaigns out there either fail or get maybe my type of success. And I think it's important to hear more for these type of creators
Mm-hmm.
and see how they did and what's their uh, impression and feelings from the platform.
Yes. I mean, so yes, so I would consider your game a great success, right?
Oh yeah,
500 plus people are going to be playing this game around the world. I think financially it may not have been a success, right? At least not immediately for you. Um, right? Like especially if you're going to, be ordering extra copies to make sure you've got enough for everybody. Um,
right.
I think, I mean, a piece of that, right, is if you want to be a game designer and go forward and kind of make a career out of it, or at least make it, I don't know, a big part of your life, you could kind of have to sort of build like a name for yourself, right? Like this is your first like truly published game that you're working on yourself, right? Like that you're creating, right?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And I think you've raised something that designers should be aware of. Because I talk to a lot of designers, and many of them, they want to make money out of gaming, either as a full-time career
Mm-hmm.
or some amount of money. And the way to do that, so first of all, just know it's not trivial. It's not straightforward. It's not about designing a game and then the money comes in.
Right.
There's a lot of selling yourself in the game. But if you do want it to be something permanent, then you should be prepared to have a pipeline of games.
Mm-hmm.
And you should be prepared to develop and release these games all the time.
Yep.
So, in effect, when you're starting your Kickstarter campaign, even during the very early phase of just thinking about it, you should already decide what you want to do after that campaign ends. And you should decide if your goal here is actually to connect to a publisher down the line.
Right.
And the campaign is just a way to attract attention. Or if you do want to publish future games of your own, then you're effectively planning to become a studio.
Yes.
And if you want to become a studio, what's going to be your pipeline? What's going to be your future games? What do you plan to do?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have any of these future plans in mind, I would wait and think about which path you want to pursue,
Yeah.
because that's going to influence your marketing strategy. It's going to influence how you frame your campaign and so on.
Right. Speaking of pipeline, yes, Joe's piping up in the chat. He's Mr. Pipeline. He's got 1 billion games. He's he's not worried about marketing and selling. He's just pitching to he's just designing all these sick games and then just pitching slash I don't know, holding them in his pocket or something. I'm just gonna shut my door real quick. I got some noisy friends. 1 sec.
Okay. Garth is gone.
Okay,
It's just
sorry
me
about
here.
that.
Oh, you're back. So actually, touching on that, on the idea of the pipeline, um, the pipeline is really about developing the game and designing the games and producing them and freighting them and marketing them and selling them.
Yes.
So every game that you ever want to produce is going to have to go through these processes, and whichever pipeline you have in mind, you should touch on these different aspects and think about how you're going to address them. And just to be clear, you don't have to solve all of these questions ahead of the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
You just need to be mindful of them and have some vague idea of where you want to go.
Right. Awesome. So there's a lot. So yeah, designing the game is just step 1, or
Yes.
or step 3 in your talk, I think. Oh no. Step 1 was design. Step 3 is the other big piece that I'm concerned about, the marketing and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you have any more tips on that step 2 for us, like the actual manufacturing and sort of freight slash? I mean, there's been some stuff in the news lately about like the Come On publisher who got everyone committed to backing their Kickstarter at a certain shipping rate, and then blasted it way up to like way more than they expected. That's getting all people riled up. That's a whole kind of different issue about
Mm-hmm.
advertising one price and charging another, but like I mean, it's kind of a symptom of what we're seeing right now with just shipping costs being insane. I think some games like yours and mine, which are kind of small, and some of the other folks, it's not as affected by that, right? Like, have you kind of looked at like your freight costs and that sort of stuff yet, or are you kind of still in the kind of manufacturing zone?
So you asked for tips. I would say that I said that manufacturing is the easiest part,
Mm-hmm.
and it is surprisingly easy nowadays. And there's several good options. I'm going to work with Longpack. They've been incredibly helpful throughout
Nice.
this process. I've heard good reviews of Panda as well,
Yeah.
and there's other manufacturers that you can reach out to. Um, if you are planning to stay in the United States, there's Delano. And if you're just sticking to cardboard, Delano could be a good option because they're going to save you the need to freight from China to the US.
Write that
So
down.
manufacturing. Oh, sorry.
I'm just writing that down. Delano.
Oh,
Okay.
so manufacturing is pretty much a solved problem. Freight, just factor in that there's a lot of volatility around freight costs.
Yep.
and that volatility is not going away anytime soon. So when you calculate your freight prices, and by the way, getting a manufacturing quote is easy. Getting a freight cost is very difficult
Yep.
until the campaign is done and you have actual numbers.
Right.
Because so many factors influence freight. All I got was an estimate that freight is going to be between $2.50 and $4 per copy. So
Yeah.
just think about it. Such a huge gap. Like if this was
Yes.
2018, I would be able to get like by the
Yeah.
cents. But the quotes I got, like the estimates I got, are between $2.50 and $4 per unit, which is
It's a
incredible.
that's a big
Um,
gap. That's a making $1.50 per more profit per game, or yeah, geez.
oh yeah, and I haven't announced it yet, but the MSRP for Worldbreakers is gonna go up. So the campaign said that the MSRP is gonna be 36.
Mm-hmm.
The MSRP is gonna go up. It's
Oh,
not going to influence anyone who backed through the
right.
campaign, including retailers. Retailers who backed through the campaign are gonna get the $36 MSRP
Nice.
cost. But now when I'm talking to distributors
Yep.
and I look at how like all the calculations that go in, the $36 MSRP when you factor in the freight price increase is just not feasible. So,
Right.
um, so when it comes to manufacturing and freight, both of these are pretty much solved problems. There are stressing, there's anxiety dealing with it because you're working with vendors and you're getting quotes and
Mm-hmm.
it's the first time you're doing this. You need to know how to read the legal agreements and all that. But the pipeline, even for first-time publishers, is pretty established.
Yeah.
That section of the pipeline is pretty established. Just talk to a lot of different vendors,
Yep.
compare the quotes, make sure you know what you're reading, get recommendations,
Mm-hmm.
and you should be in a good spot for
Right.
that.
I guess I'm nervous about it because I've heard a lot of horror stories, but I think what you're saying is like as long as you go with someone, as long as you're not trying to think too far outside the box and just go with the established sort of pipeline that everyone's been using, like using these people that are gonna do right by you, like Longpack or Panda.
Hmm.
Um, I think yeah, that's a nice safe bet. It's just a big payment, right? I'm paying a lot of money to someone, but
Yes.
that's an easier pill to swallow if you've already got a successful Kickstarter campaign, right?
Right. And either way, you don't sign any quotes
Mm-hmm.
until after the campaign is done and Kickstarter wire the funds.
Okay.
And that's gonna take somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks after the
Mm-hmm.
campaign ended. And even now, I still haven't signed the quotes with Longpack because we had some back and forth on the
Okay.
details, and I managed to save some money by reorganizing some components.
Okay.
So we're only going to sign the quote in this coming week.
Yeah.
So even though the campaign ended on March 31st, we're a month and a half afterwards, and only now I'm going to sign the quotes.
So one thing I was worried about with that piece, uh, I promise I'll drop manufacturing soon since we kind of talked about that a lot. I guess it's just kind of top of my mind, but so you get a quote from somewhere, right? And then they're typically like valid for 30 days. What if you like basically, or maybe you've got five quotes, right? And you kind of average them out or something as your cost for the Kickstarter. What if your Kickstarter is successful and all of these quotes expire because you haven't signed anything? I don't know. That just keeps me up at night too, right? Like and then all of a sudden, what if manufacturing prices just skyrocket after you've already made a promise to people on Kickstarter?
Hmm.
I guess that didn't happen
So,
to you, so
oh,
yeah.
so so I mentioned that the title of the talk is going to be crowdfunding is bad for you, and one of the points I'm going to talk about is that there is a huge risk in creating any kind of physical product. And even if you understand that risk, your backers don't.
Yeah,
And at this point, I've spoken to dozens of backers. um, I can count on one hand the number of them that were actually well informed about what crowdfunding is, how it works,
yeah,
and what kind of risk they're taking by pledging to my campaign.
yeah.
And of the dozens others I've talked to, many of them were burned by crowdfunding in the past.
Hmm.
Many of them contributed to projects and didn't see the product until years later, or maybe even not at all.
Yep.
So they've experienced it, but they're still not aware that when you pledge your money into a crowdfunding campaign, you're practically throwing it away, hoping to get something back.
Yes.
So it's high risk.
Yep.
And it's high risk for you as well as the creator.
Yeah.
And first of all, as Joe is pointing out in the chat, you should build in a disaster margin into all of your numbers. So you said, I'm going to take the average of all the 5 quotes. I would say start by taking the highest quote.
Okay.
And then build 20% on top of that. And likewise for the freight, take the highest quote and build probably 50% on top of that.
Yeah.
And this is your starting point for the calculation.
Right. I mean, it's tough though. You've got to give somewhere, right? Because someone, like, there was another number that was thrown out, which is like, isn't it 5x, right? You're supposed to take all of your costs, multiply that by 5, and that should be the MSRP. But if you're adding all this 20% on, you would have to charge an MSRP for Worldbreakers, for instance, of like $80, $90, right?
So pricing is something I've been struggling with for years.
Yeah.
Because this is not my first business. This is actually my 3rd business. And with the 2 previous businesses, I always got stumped by the same question of how much do you charge for your service, your product, and so on. And when I started my previous company, Astrolabe Diagnostics, we had the company is a service provider for analytics, and it analyzes data files for biology researchers.
Okay, nice.
And we priced the service by file. And when I started, we thought we're going to charge $10 by file. And within a few months, we actually started charging $75 by file. So times 7.5 what we initially thought. So pricing is incredibly difficult. You should start by thinking, what are people going to pay for the game? And before I started my Kickstarter, I built a spreadsheet with about 100 successful campaigns.
Sure.
And for each one of these campaigns, I had columns for the different components. How many cars do they have?
Yeah.
How many boards? Do they have wooden components? Do they have any custom components? How much do they charge? And I tried to find the games which are most similar to Worldbreakers. And when I looked at these games, the MSRP for these games was between $30 and $40.
Yeah.
And that's how I decided on the MSRP for Worldbreakers. What I didn't factor in is that I've done this exercise in like August last year.
Yeah, right.
And my game is shipping more than years later.
Yeah.
And prices always go up. That's the universe we live in. We can have a whole conversation about that. So when I did my spreadsheet in August, I should have put Joe's disaster margin into the MSRP as well. But yeah, the way you price it is not by how much it costs.
Yeah.
You price it by how much people pay. And then you decide if it's worth your time to do this.
Okay, that's a tip I have not heard, and I think I like that a lot. Start from like, yeah, how much people will pay, and then, you know, if it's going to cost you more than 20% of that to make it, maybe, I mean, you're not going to hit that 5x number that people are shouting about, so maybe just don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I think crowdfunding is very painful for indies right now is that it has become the field of large companies.
Yes.
Like, come on, as a good example.
Yeah.
And these companies are not paying what you're paying for manufacture and freight. They're getting better rates because they have more bulk and they have an established pipeline.
Yep.
So any vendor that works with these companies knows that this is not the last time they're talking to them. They have a mutual interest in pricing accordingly.
Yep.
You are not like that. For the vendors, you are an unknown quantity and you're going to pay a premium for that. So the buyers, the customers, the players, they come to Kickstarter, they see your campaigns alongside campaigns from larger established publishers, and they're making these comparisons in their mind, but it's apples to oranges because you are not, come on.
Right.
You are getting at more expensive prices, your game is going to have to cost more, or your profit is going to be much lower
Yep.
if you stick to their pricing.
Right.
Which is why crowdfunding is tricky in that way, because you're being put in competition
Yeah.
with bigger organizations that have better prices.
Yeah. It's where I feel like I'm competing. You and I are competing against two kind of different things. We're competing against uh, the big companies that are using Kickstarter as more of a pre-order kind of platform now. And we're also sort of competing, I feel like, a little bit with the perceptions that some people have, kind of that have been created by uh, poorly prepared indie designers using Kickstarter and kind of burning people, right? So we've got sort of two different things that I feel like we're kind of competing against. And I've seen this all the time. I'm on Kickstarter every week when the new stuff comes out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just giving us a bad name. And then, oh my gosh, how can I ever compete with this? This looks amazing, right? It's a lot going on this little platform.
And now it's my turn to take a note, because this is a great point that didn't occur to me until you mentioned it. There's some terrible indie projects out
Mm-hmm.
there, and if you follow Kickstarter, if you plan on running your own Kickstarter, you should join the board game subreddit.
Mm-hmm.
And there are two weekly posts that go out. One is from the shelf, and this is a person. His name is Adam. He runs a Discord channel called The Shelf, where they track upcoming Kickstarter campaigns. And every week, Adam releases a post with here's all the campaigns that are launching next week. And then there's another post of ongoing campaigns, which is updated weekly. So every week they post all of the current Kickstarter campaign in the gaming space,
Nice.
especially board gaming,
Yeah.
and how they're doing. Both of these projects also include hashtags.
Oh no.
And
Yeah.
some of the hashtags are that the campaign is either suspicious or
Yep.
an like looks like an outright joke. Um, and you don't want your campaign to be on that list, but most people don't know that these resources are there,
Yeah.
and they're just conflating all of the indie projects together, and some of these are embarrassing. They just look bad.
Yep.
There might be outright like bigoted. um,
Oh yeah.
and even those of them, like the less worst offenders, still have very long delays or don't ship at all, or the final product varies widely from what was promised during the campaign.
Oh yeah.
And as you pointed out, all of this gives indies a bad name, especially when it comes to crowdfunding, where all of these different players are just averaged out into this like non-existent meta indie,
Yeah.
which is not you.
Right. Right. Yeah, we need a separate tier. We need indie, serious indie, and this is I don't know, and whatever the other category is. I'm not sure which one I fit in, but I guess we'll see.
So one
Um,
of the things that making a huge spreadsheet with Kickstarters helped me do, and also working with manufacturers, I have a pretty strong idea of how much stuff is supposed to cost and is supposed to be priced.
mhm.
And whenever I look at the Kickstarter campaign, I can just scroll through it and say, wait, this does not add up. And the numbers that this publisher is giving, something here is very weird. This is not something you would get if you just sit there and look at the campaign. But if you open a spreadsheet and you copy paste all their promises and you just put numbers on them, it doesn't add up. And just looking at the past year, there has been several huge campaigns, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of campaigns. When I looked at their numbers are not making sense. And I actually have an ongoing bet with a friend where I say these are not going to ship, and if they are going to ship, they're going to have a huge delay on them.
Mhm.
So um, I'm really curious to see how these campaigns add up, because they look legit, but I'm super suspicious. And just to be clear, it's none of the campaigns we're actually showing right now. I'm not naming any
Oh
names.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry.
Um,
I was just having a look through Kickstarter here. No, yeah.
yeah,
This is the recommended for me. I'm sure these are all great games. Yeah.
I hope so. Um, But yeah, you should be mindful that people have been burned by the indie portion and the established portion of crowdfunding, and their fears and anxieties, they're going to bring them to your campaign.
Right. Ooh. Eldritch Overload, Fantasy Cyberpunk Tarot. I'm. I won't put in all my details right now, but I will be backing that. Say no more. Yeah. So Kickstarter's a great place. It's a dangerous place. It's not what it used to be, right? Kickstarter used to be. I don't know. It used to be a crowdfunding website. Now it's like a. It's kind of a weird place for all the big companies really kind of take it over. They're on the front pages everywhere, right? Because that's it's their pre-order thing. It's their hype building. They use it for that. They just use it to be kind of, I feel like, relevant in the news, right? uh,
Yeah.
because people are always talking about the Kickstarters in every kind of forum you can find on Facebook, all those Facebook groups and in the Reddit groups. Um, Feels like you're not a new game if you don't have a Kickstarter first, right? So
Yeah.
it's a different world. It used to be for just for us, right? We would wanted our game to be made and we had to put it up there. But
And you see, when you look at the history, we look at past campaigns, and I also talk to creators of past campaigns. I just reached out and asked, hey, can we have a phone call? Um, Campaigns up to, let's say, 2018 or so are very different than the campaign we see today. And the shift, I can't pinpoint it, but it was somewhere around 2019
mhm.
where suddenly big companies are swarming in
Yeah,
and the production values have gone way too high for an indie.
right.
It's no longer, you look at the videos used to be the creator
Yep.
just sitting in front of a webcam talking about themselves, maybe with a few videos of prototype components, as opposed to the videos today where you almost never see the creator. It's very unusual to see the creator in the flesh. And full disclosure, Worldbreakers trailer doesn't show me in the flesh either. But there are these slick productions that, and you look at the entire campaign is very slick, very polished, finished components. The game is pretty much done. Very different than what it was in the past.
Yeah.
So if you are thinking about crowdfunding, you should be mindful that there's a pre 2019 crowdfunding and there's today's crowdfunding, and these are very different. And today's crowdfunding is not as indie friendly as it was.
Right.
I'm not even sure it's indie friendly at all.
Yeah. You're competing. That's. I mean, it's a great point. Like you, it used to be like people were the expectations have shifted dramatically too. I mean that comes with the quality of the campaign, right? People used to expect to see some unfinished products there that they just needed some funding to finish the product. Now they're expecting all the art to be in, or like 90% of the art to be in. They expect the game to be basically fully play tested, or at least 90% play tested. They're like, and they expect to get their game by Christmas too. So, and
Yeah.
it's a different world. Are people going to have Worldbreakers by Christmas?
I don't know. It's not up to me.
No promises. Okay.
Yeah. So when I was talking to people before running the campaign, one of the things I kept saying is, I'm going to take a huge buffer on shipping
Yeah.
because I'm still concerned about COVID-19.
Sure.
And people replied with, "Oh, what are you worried about? It's going to calm down by the time your game is manufactured." And now we're seeing shutdown in China because of COVID.
Yep.
And um, say what you will about the Chinese government, and there is a lot of criticism to be had. When they shut things down, they shut things down.
Mm-hmm.
And um, like when they shut down whole regions of the country because of COVID, forget about it. It's shut down. You're
Yeah.
not going to see anything. Um, so I can't make any promises. I really hope we can get delivered by the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
That would be amazing. I'm doing everything in my power.
Yeah.
But the campaign promised March, and I'm going to stick to that because that's just the
Right.
safest way to do it.
Yeah. No, it's a strange world. So we're talking about a game that you launched in March, so you put in a full year buffer for yourself. I mean, obviously the campaign
Yes.
ended at the end of March, so you basically 11 months since the end of the campaign. But yeah, um, And that's a long buffer, but that's kind of what it takes, right? With there's so many uncertainties, and you don't want to promise people. I love, by the way, I didn't mention this, but I love that you promised people a price, decided that that price wasn't the good price for you, but the people that you promised that price to in the Kickstarter, they're still getting the game for that price. I absolutely love that. I mean, I think that's a thing that not everyone's doing, right? Like some people are taking the hit, like you. Some people are like, "Sorry, customer, you've got to take the hit." And I feel like I strongly feel like much of the I feel like the people that are backing you on Kickstarter are taking on so much risk already that I feel like the extra risk or any risk that you can absorb as the publisher, I think it's right to be the one to kind of take those extra hits. So I applaud that for sure.
Thank you. So, just to be clear, I'm not being a big hero. Let's talk about the numbers.
Okay,
Let's talk
sure.
about the numbers. Right now, assuming nothing goes haywire, producing one unit of Worldbreakers is going to cost about $5.
Okay.
And that's for 1,500 copies. And freighting it is going to cost something like, let's say $4. So let's say $9 to produce the unit. I'm not talking about the development cost.
Right.
The development cost was much higher than that. Like the
Right.
development cost for the game was in the tens of thousands of dollars.
Sure,
So
exactly. Yeah.
I'm just talking about production and freight.
Yep.
If I am selling the game direct to the consumer, I can comfortably sell it for $30. So the Kickstarter price, I think, is a great price for me and for the backers. It's a very sweet spot, and I'm happy with the decision to price the Kickstarter at $30. That was the right decision. The mistake I've done is to put the MSRP at 36
I see. Okay.
because when you talk to distributors, your actual profit is a percentage of the MSRP. And as an indie, more often than not, the percentage you're going to get is somewhere around 30%. So if I'm saying the MSRP is $36, I'm going to see from distribution around $12. When the
Right.
game is manufactured for 9
Yeah.
and I see 12, that's not a very good number.
Sure.
And this is why the MSRP, I'm going to have to increase it just to make sure that I see enough profit per unit to break
Yeah.
even with the development costs.
Totally.
But if I can sell directly to the consumer, this is much less of a concern.
Right.
Because honestly, at the end of the day, your biggest expense is distribution and selling to retailers and so on. There's just so many middlemen that gets add up that the MSRP is to go up.
Yep.
But I'm pretty sure the online store for Worldbreakers is gonna keep the $30 price or
Okay.
something close to it.
Nice.
But for distribution, it's gonna be higher than that,
Right.
just because there's so many middlemen.
Yep. No, that's wonderful. Did you have a kind of a retailer like backer level when the Kickstarter was live? I didn't notice.
When I launched it, I didn't.
Okay.
But then, as soon as the campaign succeeded, I had stores starting to reach out and
Okay.
asking for it. So as soon as the campaign funded, I added it.
Nice.
And I also started reaching out to some stores, especially based on backer recommendations.
Oh.
So backers would come in and say, I asked my store to back. And I'm like, oh, great, thank you. I'm going to reach out to them to make sure they actually do it. You should know that if your goal is just to get funded, then you probably shouldn't have a retailer tier because one, it's not a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
The retailer pledge is typically just a deposit. It's not the full cost.
Yeah.
For Worldbreakers, it's $50. So 16 retailers times 50, it's $800. Like it's not much for getting the campaign actually funded.
Yes.
And also,
and that's
go ahead.
that's for what, like 2 or 3 copies, 5 copies? I don't know. That $50 tier, like how many? Oh, I see. It's just them. Like it's just
a deposit. Yes.
Yeah, it's okay. It's just like we will want this in a year. Okay, interesting.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And also, as soon as some backers know their local store is going to get it, because the good stores are going to inform their backers during the campaign.
Oh gosh, yeah.
They're going to tell them, don't back the campaign because we're
Oh
going to get it for you. And that is fine. That is
yeah,
totally fine with me. I want the stores to succeed. If I
yeah.
want the game to live for long, I'm going to have support from the stores. So I'm happy that the stores did it. I think it's the right choice.
Mm-hmm.
I told some of my backers, your store is going to buy the game. You don't have to pledge anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and but you should be mindful that if your goal is to get funded, if you're concerned about reaching your target, you should not have a retailer pledge. It's
Okay.
gonna lose you money. It's not gonna make you money.
Oh my gosh. Well, that is a good tip. That is not something. So that's new information for me. So I'm gonna take that to heart. Uh,
Yeah, and once you get funded, you know you're getting your game produced. You hit that minimum, then you can do a retailer pledge.
yeah. So the missing lint is asking in the chat, won't distributors be mad if the game is under MSRP on your website?
It highly depends on the distributor,
Okay.
and Joe is giving a great point on that.
Okay.
Um, to be candid, I'm probably not going to put 30 on the website. I'm probably going to put 42 and say that shipping is free, and
Oh, there
shipping
you
is
go.
about $12.
That's a good way
So
around it. Yeah.
yeah, it's going to say 42
Mm-hmm.
plus 12 for shipping minus 12 shipping discount. So I'm going to eat the shipping cost for the
Perfect.
consumer.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is totally fair, by the way, because the distributors and the retailers, the stores, they have their own expenses, right? So
Yeah.
they're not sitting there thinking, oh yeah, Ellie produced the game for 9 and we're only giving him 12. That's
No, they've
like
got they've got to they've got to earn some money off of it too.
right. And
Yeah.
nobody is in this business to become rich. There's no Elon
Nope.
Musks in the board gaming business. Everyone has been fair, everyone has been transparent
Yeah.
with their pricing and why they charge these prices. At no point did I hit someone and say, "Oh my gosh, like I just talked to this person and their prices, they're totally inflated. They're making a killing in this business." Like
Mm-hmm.
that never happens. Everyone has been fair, everyone has been accommodating. Everyone has been honest in saying like if you had 20 games, I would give you better prices, but you have only one, so I'm taking a risk with you. Um, so yeah, nobody's making a killing. Everyone is being fair. There isn't a lot of money in the pot to go
Yeah.
around. Um, it's just a question of how much of it you're going to shoulder, how you're going to shoulder it, how you're going to communicate it to your customers and to your vendors and so on, and being responsible
Yeah.
so that you make the money that you want while not burning off anyone in the industry.
Speaking of communication, I backed your campaign. I've been seeing all of your
Thank you.
emails. Um, so yeah, you've been really very transparent the whole way with everybody about what process you're in now. And I think a lot of people appreciate that. I mean, me personally, I just put it in my spam folder, but um, but no, seriously, that's great. Um, a question Joe had earlier. We're getting down into the last few minutes here, so I guess I'll ask you Joe's dumb questions now. Um, just kidding, Joe. Did you have any unexpected like setbacks during the campaign, or like unexpected amounts of money? Like, was there like a big amount of money you had to drop on something that you didn't expect, or was there some sort of big problem you had during the campaign that like wasn't anticipated? Is there anything that happened to you?
That's a fantastic question. And oh, sorry, did you have another thing you wanted to ask?
Oh no, I just saw we got rated. So welcome everybody. We're here talking with Elli, designer of Worldbreakers, and we're talking about Kickstarter.
And we're
And
just going to talk about. Oh, go ahead.
no, that's it. Go. Yeah, take it away with the.
And we're just going to talk about the most fun thing ever: spreadsheets and money.
Yeah.
Um, I feel that I was relatively well prepared
Okay.
coming into this campaign, and I think that running 2 other businesses before was a huge boon in that regard,
Mm-hmm.
where I had a pretty solid prediction on how much things are going to cost. And you talked about messaging and transparency. Going into this adventure last year, my budget for the whole thing, um, production, development, illustrators, Kickstarter campaign, and so on, my budget for the whole thing was $50,000.
Nice.
And as of today, my expenses sit at around $55,000.
Wow,
So
impressive.
I was 10% off.
Yeah.
It sounds terrible, but if you've done any kind of budgeting for like high risk projects, I'm super proud that I'm only
Yeah.
10% off.
Yeah.
um, I think it is important to be mindful of the marketing expense.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to my argument from before on how crowdfunding is very tricky. I was saying just crowdfunding is bad for you. Crowdfunding is tricky and challenging. This
Yeah.
is this is like a clickbaity title for a talk at a convention,
I'm
right?
putting it on our
Um,
YouTube thumbnail for sure.
oh yeah, you should, yes. And make sure that bad is in capital letters.
Okay.
So one acronym that you should be mindful of is ROI, return on investment.
Mm-hmm.
And return on investment says you put in X money, you're getting out Y money. Y divided by X is your ROI for this project. And the ROI for marketing in crowdfunding, the number I got before starting the campaign was 1 to 4. So for every dollar I put in, I'm going to get $4 out of the campaign. We're going to have a fun little math exercise. The campaign raised $30,000.
Uh-huh.
Could you guess the marketing budget?
Okay. 700. No, I'm bad at math. Is it $750? No. That
No,
would be the 1 to 4, right?
That would be 1 to 40.
Yeah. Oh, 1 to 40. Okay, 7,500.
Yes.
There it is. Okay. Yeah.
So the marketing budget for Worldbreakers was about $7,600.
Dang. So you were right on the money.
Yes, we are very close to. Our host is not Bob Barker.
Hey.
So yeah, the number is around 1 to 4, and about $2,000 went to social media, especially Facebook. Around $3,000 went to content creators.
Okay.
So all the different channels that run your preview, these previews all cost money, and the cost of a preview is going to be between $300 and around $1,100. So the big channels like Dice Tower, like Rado's run-throughs, and so on.
Yep.
You should be, if you want them to run a preview, a dedicated preview, you should be able to drop between $750 and $1,000 on that.
Yep.
The money went through, like some of the money went for published like advertising on websites,
Mm-hmm.
and some of it went to Magic the Gathering content creators. I'm putting them on their own category.
Yep.
So the
That's
marketing
big for
budget
a game like that.
Yeah.
So
the marketing
budget.
budget.
Your audience. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. You can go to 110%. The marketing budget was $7,500. The campaign raised $30,000.
Yeah.
You should assume a similar ratio for your game. And that's not factoring my time, right? My time is free, of course.
Yep.
But just looking at your expenses, you should assume a 1 in 4.
Yeah.
And again, work in reverse, the same way with pricing. Don't ask yourself what's going to be the production cost, and based on that, aside and the MSRP. Decide what's the MSRP and then build your production cost. Mm-hmm. Likewise for marketing, if you want to raise $10,000, you should be able to put in around $2,500 in marketing.
Yep.
And if you don't have the $2,500 to put it in marketing, then don't do it, right? Because it's probably not going to work. And Joe said in the comments, this is not to say that you should not design board games if you don't have the $2,500. Just don't make that game. If your game needs $10,000 and you don't have $2,500 for marketing expenses, design a $3,000 game, mm-hmm. and start from that.
Nice.
Be mindful that marketing is around 1 to 4. Take the cost of your campaign, divide it by 4. You would be expected to put in that amount of money in marketing. you should be expected to start putting in that money
Mhm.
around 6 months before the campaign launch.
Yep.
And then there's the whole strategy of how to spread it out,
Yes.
where to spend it, what's the timing of spending it,
I'm
and
super
so
curious
on.
about that. If you wanted to go in that, like in the last couple of minutes, I would love to hear like, did you have better ROI on ads versus influencers? Would you do anything differently? Would you spread it out any differently if you could do it again?
I'll answer that in a sec.
Okay,
I just want to mention one more important point
totally.
around budgeting. Um, we mentioned before how there are certain expectations around how your campaign is going to look. Because right now, this is not 2018, your campaign needs to look slick,
Mm-hmm.
and your video needs to look pretty fancy as well.
Mm-hmm.
The video is gonna cost you somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000, like between $1,000 and $2,000 for the video. And then the page design, if you want to hire a designer for it, probably you can get away with 750, but I would budget for double that. I would budget for 1,500. So you should budget around $3,000 just for the assets for your campaign. It's possible you might go lower than that, especially if you know some Illustrator yourself, if you can do some video editing yourself.
Yep.
But otherwise, if you want to compete in crowdfunding and you want to raise, let's say, $10,000 or above, you're going to have to look like a project,
Yep.
like a 10,000 and above project. And that means shelling out a few $1,000s in video editing and design. So again, just be mindful of that,
Mm-hmm.
that designing the campaign page is expensive. Factor that into your expenses. And these expenses come before the campaign. It's an investment on your end. And you should be mindful of all of that.
And speaking of campaign design, video design, if anyone watching has any questions on that, join our Discord. We've got some really talented folks in there, and I have some leads for you as well. So happy to help on that front.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
that's huge. Yeah.
you asked about which channels worked better than others.
Yes.
Um,
Please tell us.
so I haven't crunched the numbers on all of them,
Okay.
but I can tell you that the most effective marketing I got was from the Android Netrunner community.
Oh, right.
And I played Netrunner for years.
Yeah.
I was part of the community. I ran tournaments in New York, and at least a couple Netrunner content creators just agreed to feature Worldbreakers free of charge.
Heck yeah.
And also, because I'm involved with this community, I reached out to people and they spread the word.
Mm-hmm.
So the ROI there is infinity
Yeah.
because
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't spend any money and I got a lot of backers and support and warm fuzzy feelings from the Netrunner
Oh
community,
yeah. That's big.
which is awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome, by the way, like amazing people, and I'm very grateful for knowing these people. Um, Apart from that, looking at the others, Facebook is pretty straightforward. Every conversion on Facebook, you should assume 10% of them buy the product. That number seems to hold pretty well. It's actually between 7 and 15%, but 10 seems to be a safe number for Facebook. So take your conversion rate, multiply it by 10, and that's how much you paid for that person, for that backer.
Nice.
So for example, if your cost per conversion on Facebook is $2, then out of every game you sell to Facebook people, $20 pretty much went into marketing to Facebook. Just be mindful of that.
Yeah.
Content creators are a huge hit or miss. The variability around content creators is enormous. I think at this point there is saturation of Kickstarter previews, especially on the big channels.
Yep.
And that's why I did not have a dedicated preview with Dice Tower and Riders Run playthroughs and so on. Because just when you look at the conversion rates, they are abysmal. And these channels are expensive. So
Yeah.
I don't know if it's worth getting a dedicated preview from these big channels. I would stick to the smaller content creators. They're going to be less expensive, and you're going to see a bigger ROI just
Mhm.
because their crowd is much more intimate, and usually they're less flooded.
Yes.
Because if you go on Rado's playlists, at this point they're releasing multiple previews a week.
Oh yeah.
You're just being lost in the stream of previews. While with the smaller content creators, they only release a preview every other week or so. Um, so you're gonna get more attention.
Yeah.
And then another great source of backers is conventions. Um, for example, I went to Midwinter Gaming Convention,
Mhm.
and it's a small convention. It's up in Wisconsin. It was super fun. Met a lot of really nice people, and almost any person I've spoken to ended up buying a copy.
Nice.
I didn't talk to a lot of people. I talked to about 30 people,
Yeah.
but each one of them bought a copy,
Oh yeah.
and all of them are supportive and nice, and I'm still in communication with many of them.
Yeah.
So if you feel like doing the hustle and going to conventions,
Mhm.
the more you do it, the better you become. So I spoke to more experienced convention goers. They can get to between 150 and 200 people per convention.
Yeah.
Um, if you have that kind of like social presence,
Yes.
then conventions can be an amazing ROI, and they just convert very well.
Yeah.
Again, if you can do the hustle.
Right.
I know that.
You have to be witty, you have to be able you have to have some charisma in order to you can't just be sitting in your booth and let the game sell itself. Like it'll do that a little bit, but
Right.
we can't all be
And
Ellies though.
so you don't be me, because speaking to other convention like goers, my numbers are really low.
Oh,
And
okay.
also looking around the room, I saw demo tables that were full nonstop.
Yeah.
Distilled is a great example.
Oh yeah.
Um, Someone was always sitting at the Distilled demo table,
Yep.
while mine was pretty sparse.
Hmm.
I'm not salty about it either. Or anything. I admit the fact that I'm not experienced with it,
Sure. Yeah.
and though I don't enjoy it that much,
Yeah.
but if it is something you enjoy and something you're comfortable with, and you feel like you can do the hustle of sitting in the convention booth and or sitting at the demo table and just getting people, like if your demo table is full all the time, you're gonna see great conversion rates
Oh
on
yeah.
conventions.
Yeah. Just like the old days. That was how you got all the it's just word of mouth, man. I
And
mean,
by the way,
yeah.
speaking to people from like 2016, 2017, 2018, one of the things I hear often is that they went to the conventions and they built this network of people,
Hmm.
and everyone they talked to were super excited about the crowdfunding campaign, and all of these people converted. Nowadays, it's more difficult because when you do a crowdfunding campaign, you're no longer a beautiful snowflake. Like everyone is
Right.
doing a crowdfunding campaign. It's like
Exactly.
podcasts.
Yep.
Everybody has a podcast. Everybody has a crowdfunding campaign.
Yep.
Um, so that's another way in which crowdfunding is difficult to get
Yeah.
attention.
Totally. Well, I mean, it's tough, but you can do it. Thank you so much, Ellie, for already like you haven't even gotten your games out and you're already giving back to the community.
I'm trying.
Telling us all of the good tips and some of this stuff. I couldn't find a pen, but I'll just have to rewatch the stream later to get these notes. Or maybe Joe took some notes for me. Thanks to everyone who joined us. Let me put up some websites here. Worldbreakersgame.com. This is a good place to go. You can see all the good stuff. Um,
Yeah, and I'm gonna put the pre-order store in the link.
Pre-order page. Here it
And
is.
yep, if you want to buy the game, just go there and get it. And it's still selling for $30. So forget everything I said about MSRP. Uh, if you buy it now, you're awesome. You're getting
Yeah.
it for a discount.
Yes. Please do. Yes. The more we can get, uh, the better, right? So,
Yeah.
and everyone should be playing this. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for your time, Ellie. Thanks to everyone that joined us. Um, and we'll see you. I think we might be off next week, but we'll see you in 2 weeks, everybody.
Thank you.